This is how you know you've had a heck of a year. When your 1 year journal, it literally made it through 6 months. We're talking about like pages. Oh, Luna, I mean, you're training a journaler, but just like pages and pages and pages and pages and pages and pages. Oh, I was at the New York Stock Exchange and Gary launched his book. We were at the stock exchange to launch the book, and then at the end they had streamers pop out, and a woman by the name of Andrea Sullivan, she's the director of Vibe, she caught it mid-air. And then she says, Jasmine, you need this. And then I stuck it in my pocket and I forgot. I took my journal to New York and I stuck it here. Look at the timing. Whoa, that's weird. When I look at old vlogs, and sometimes when I look at myself in the podcast, I am 100% me. But I also have like a shield, an armor of confidence. And I am a confident person, but oftentimes I have to put on the confidence to feel confident, which is fine. When I'm on a stage or when I'm hosting a podcast, I should be confident. What happens is when I feel that level of confidence, I actually am not in a place of learning or receiving. I actually can't hear words because what I'm trying to do is be the words. And so part of a program that I'm a part of called Vibe, I get a 15-minute call with Gary, talk about strategy or any questions you have with him or for him. And one of the things that I was excited about was showing up and being raw and ugly and just being, and when I say ugly, I mean the ugly side that you don't want to show as an entrepreneur. Like when you're meeting with Gary Vaynerchuk, or at least when I'm meeting with Gary Vaynerchuk, I want to have it together. I want to be like, yeah, all the things. And that doesn't serve me because it's not my true self. I'm at a point where I'm diversifying my business and I'm growing into a new entrepreneur. And I don't know what I'm doing. If I come across like I do, I cannot hear the advice that he would have. Energetically, I'm not going to show up in the place of being highest receipt. I need to receive from him. And I was so excited for this call because I get to receive from Gary. I get to ask him a really personal question. And his team reached out last week and they asked if they could record the call. I said yes because it's an amazing opportunity. But then I immediately went into, oh my God, if we record the call, and then I started feeling all these feelings. I started feeling feelings of, should I ask the same question? Should I show up the same way? And then I started doing a little bit of journaling. And what kept on coming up for me was this idea of, I'm gonna have this call with Gary and I'm gonna ask him a question and I'm gonna kind of talk to him about the thing that I think I want to build. And if people see that and then I don't build it, or I fail, or it takes me 890 years to build it, what will people think? And I thought really deep and hard on that question. And what I came up to was, that's 100% ego. And when I realized that's 100% ego, I started realizing, I actually don't care. And when you put yourself out there and then you say, like Babe Ruth, I'm gonna go out, I'm gonna hit that, and then you don't, you strike out. Well then, what does that actually look like? I thought my concern was, what are people gonna think when I don't, or if I don't hit it? And then I realized that's 100% ego. And at the end of the day, I don't actually care if people see that I tried something and failed. I don't, because I try things and fail a lot. What I actually realized was my greatest fear was having a conversation with Gary and then realizing that based on his insights, his advice, his experience, I wouldn't want to build it anymore. And so I've spent the last 1.5 or 2 years thinking and ideating and plotting towards the next thing. And finally, I'm talking to somebody who's done the thing I think I want to do. And then I'm going to ask him, what did you learn? Would you do it again? What would you do differently? What rooms do I need to be in? And once I get all of that advice and insight, will I still want to build it? And will I have the courage to say, I don't know if I want to build that? And to be so open in front of so many people, it makes me feel like, oh man, you're watching me go through business puberty. And then I thought to myself, okay, so you're watching me go through business puberty. Okay. And so I'm creating this and I'm documenting it because I know Gary's team is going to be recording it. If they use it, I don't know. But if they use it, it's on me to document my story. I can't control what somebody else edits. I can control what is the truth of the situation, and I don't have to create anything. I could just document this. I met with Gary about 5 years ago, drove to the Vayner offices in LA, and I told Gary about this idea, this business I wanted to build called Social Curator. And he looked across from me and he said,
it's funny, we literally almost built this app 3 years ago.
I'm so glad you did it. I was like, no, I don't want to build a business that's in competition with Gary. And he looked across from me and he said something I'll never forget.
There's so much abundance.
You have to approach it from abundance. And he said, I hope you have competition because it will make you better. It was like the Gary juke if I've ever seen one. And it forever changed the way that I look at my business. Because when we saw competitors coming into our space, I celebrated them with every bit of my heart because I said that competition is going to make us better. But here's the question I didn't ask Gary. Why didn't you build that business? Here was somebody who's a lot more experienced, a lot more successful, has a heck of a lot more connections, money, opportunities. Why didn't he build the thing that I was building? And I didn't ask him. I wonder if I had asked him and he told me why he didn't build it, I would, one, maybe not build Social Curator, or two, build it differently based on his expertise. And so 5 years ago, shame on me for not asking that question. Today, oh, it feels weird saying it. Okay, so what I think, how stupid. Why on these freaking blogs do I, no, not today, not today. What I think I want to build is a holding company. And people are like, why are you crying about a holding company? Listen, because the idea itself scares me because I actually don't know. I didn't know the word holding company existed until January of 2023. In 2022, I saw this idea, and I can't even explain it. I just saw this thing. It was like this, like a shape of like an octopus. It was kind of like a big head, and it had like arms or tentacles or something. I kept on saying like this big thing, and I told JD, I'm like, I think I'm being called to build this thing with different businesses underneath it. And he's like, okay, well, let's experiment. Let's start thinking about what this looks like. Let's start interviewing. Let's start asking questions. And then in January 2023, I sat in a room at a mastermind, and somebody had said the word holding company, and they started describing what I heard as the octopus that I had imagined. And I was like, wait, what? So there in Google, I'm in the mastermind, and I'm like, what is a holding company? And I start reading about holding company. I was like, oh my God, the holding company is the octopus I saw in my mind. It exists. And so then for the last probably 2 years, I've been asking and interviewing and just doing the deep, dark, ugly work of what it might look like to get our business in shape, to build a holding company so that Jasmine Star exists as a holding company and there's companies and businesses underneath it. One of the companies underneath the holding company would be starting off as Social Curator. And then there's a whole litany of other businesses underneath. And so what comes up for me is like the deep fear, excitement, worry. Do I know what I'm getting into? Because the difference between this situation and the last situation that I had talked to Gary is when I talked to Gary, I actually didn't know what I was building. I had an idea right when I met Gary. We had this idea. It was kind of stretching out before us. The idea that I had when I spoke to him is so different than what the business looks like now. And every year we kept on changing what the business would become. It's a SaaS company. We have an offering. We use AI. It's a schedule. Fine. I backed myself into that. But now I'm at an opportunity to look and stand at the base of the mountain and talk to somebody who's already ascended it and ask him, would you do it again? And if you would, what would you do differently? What are the lessons that you learned? And then at the end of the call, like life never works like that. When the time is right, I will determine if this is the thing I actually want to do. And I want to be very clear, Gary is not an indicator of what I'm going to do. I'm asking Gary for an indication of what it might look like. Hey, how are you?
Good, how are things?
Great, I'm very excited to meet with you, thank you.
How's it been going?
Fantastic, I love Vive. I had a conversation with Andrea and James last week, and just getting closer to them and getting into their brains has been worth its weight in gold. There's been so many surprises that when I had originally signed up, I didn't know that we'd get executive coaching with Dr. Natasha. She has been a 12 out of 10. Blowing my mind. And so all good and great things. So thank you.
Kind of like when we talked, I think the idea of like, you knew that something, just like the last time with 4Ds, there would be something there. Like, I'm too scared to ruin my reputation. You know what I mean?
Yep.
So I was very confident in this program. We really are excited about it. I have some big meetings with them coming up to think about how we're building this out. You know, this is a nugget of a thing that we knew, and we knew we could over deliver for everybody, so I knew that that wasn't scary. But what I was hoping for is now happening, which is there's something there, and now I've got to cook it.
Well, that's good. Well, it's a great start. If this is just your mise en place, like, we're great. We're off to the races. So, Gary, I had the opportunity to meet with you in LA 5 or 6 years ago. It was highlight. I was so excited, and still to this day remain excited. And one of the things that I told you was how I was building Social Curator. And one of the things that you had said at the time was something along the lines of, "Oh, we thought about building that too." And I told you, "Oh, I'm so glad you didn't build it. I don't want to be in the game of Gary Vaynerchuk." And then you said something that was a classic Gary juke, which was abundance. Abundance. I hope you have competitors because it makes you better.
Correct.
And I never forgot that piece of advice. And when I look back at that experience, the one question I didn't ask was, well, why didn't you build it? But that's not my question today,
Right.
because shame on me for not asking that question then. But presently, when I look at what you have built, and I didn't even know the word holding company existed until 2023. And in my mind, I had this idea of something that I wanted to build. And then I'm now realizing that that is the very thing that you have built. And so knowing what you know now, would you have built the holding company? And if so, if you can go back, what would you do differently?
Great question. Yes, I would definitely build it. I'm very good at being wide open to changing my mind in micros, but holding to a strategy in macro. I knew that I wanted to build the best marketing communications company in the world that was global, and that I was open to it being a series of companies or a company. I was never going to be overly romantic about social media. We started this in 2009, it's 24, we're 15 years. I would have said in 15 years, if no one's doing social, then we're doing whatever that thing is, and I continue to do that. So I wasn't romantic about what services we did, how many companies were in the entity, if it was 1 or 100. More importantly, I was romantic about being always current. What's unique about my career is from 2006 to today, there's not a lot of people who have 18 years of on the record, publicly following the flows of innovation around attention and communication at the same level that I do. And that's really humbling and good.
What would you do differently?
I would have probably hired more people with more experience from the industry earlier. So romantic of staying clean with my own intuitive ideas. I demonized people from the outside that did it the old way. And it probably wasted some time on simple things that I could have done by having people around. I mean, this is my biggest issue. It's still to this day. I would have fired faster on people I knew weren't capable. It's a real disease of mine, Jazz. Mm-hmm. I'm such a bleeding heart. Mm-hmm. It's just not good for business, and it's not good for them. Mm-hmm. Like, because it leads to nepotism and resentment, and it never ends up good anyway. Mm-hmm. I fired them eventually anyway.
Conversations that I had with Andrea when I was asking, how did you court her to come into Vayner? And I think that early on, like now looking at what Vayner is, it is a formidable force in the industry. But at the time, when I look at myself and I know that I want to hire people with experience, but they have optionality. What was like a key factor? Could you go back and say, identify the pattern?
I think you'll be able to convince people to do it. How did I do it? By being okay with all the people that didn't see it. In the same way I did it when I was a boy. Every girl that I thought was cute that didn't want to be with me, in my mind, I was like, they're going to be really sad one day.
And oh, are they?
and so I think you need to take the same approach with this business. You're going to identify someone and you want Ricky Thompson, mm-hmm. and he's going to say no. And then literally you're like, cool, next.
Who should I be talking to? Who should I be aligning to? Not in regards to building a holding company that looks like VaynerX. Anybody with the idea of holding companies. Because what I want to do is, I'm not the best at coming up with new ideas, but I'm really good at spotting patterns and then identifying for my strengths and building from there. So when you look at people who've successfully built holding companies inside or outside of your industry, who is the formidable leader? Who's somebody who's creating content? Who is the person that I can learn from?
That's an interesting question. Private equity firms, talent agencies, CAA, UTA, WME. Dig into those two worlds, private equity and talent representation.
If you were building VaynerX again and you had nothing, what would you be doing differently or the same that you did? You look back at yourself and you're like, damn, that was pretty incredible. Or even when I had nothing, I could have leveraged it in a different way.
It was today. It's pretty easy for me to answer. I'd still want to build the same thing, which is in several years, I want this to be this huge conglomerate. What I would do is I would have different services, right? I would be focusing on AI right now, focus on things that are of the moment that people don't have figured out that I could build on top of.
When we were meeting in Vive and we had lunch and you and Mona graciously hosted us, you had said something that I am still trying to wrap my mind around. And I was just like, what you essentially said was, are you gonna pick up what I'm putting down? And you talked about acquiring a company like Cracker Jacks or Snapple and taking it from like a $40 million company that was once like a behemoth, and then you turning it into a $400 million company based on the principles of people who are actually getting what it is that you're trying to inculcate the current team with. So there's like, it felt like you were drawing a clear line in the sand of people who get it and then those who don't, and the people who get it are gonna go on to this next iteration. And to me, I felt like, are you building the holding company specifically for that, or would you just not start focusing on that acquisition? And does the team know that culturally?
The team knows, people like James and Andrea and other senior leaders, that my goal with VaynerX is to build a holding company that is the best marketing company in the world, then anoint an active CEO and stay on as chairman, and then go build a either private equity firm or a holding company of brands and build that company, and then take the best players from VaynerX over to the owned and operated businesses, from services to owned.
And that's been very open in the organization?
Yes, it's actually probably been very inspiring to the best players, because they are like self-selecting, like, I'm gonna be the best and I'm gonna go over to Snapple or Reebok when Gary buys it. That's one of the reasons I do believe the 1% of 1% here are probably here because of that.
How are you identifying your 1%?
I'm in the trenches every day. I live this life. That's why I'm in the trenches. It's almost like my Navy SEAL. This is an army, but I'm gonna need my Navy SEALs when I go, and I'm not willing to guess.
It's crazy because when I hear that, if I was working there, I would self-select and be like, it's boot camp. So I wonder if that is part of the culture, because you know how you build, you attract more with honey. And so I was like, you come from this honey, but then there's also there's this really sharp edge to what it is that you're doing. And the balance of the two as a leader has been really inspiring. And so I wasn't sure how transparent you were with your team, being like, oh, we're a honeycomb, but make no mistake.
Honey empire, you've heard it, it's real here.
But within the empire, what you're saying is also as a leader is this honeycomb is not going to be the honeycomb that is the next thing that I build.
To your point, this is just a proxy to the bigger empire. This is like step one, but is the operating system that gets me to step two.
And you've been transparent with everybody in the organization saying that, and you're unafraid to say those types of things.
Jazz, even crazier, I've literally said things like, if I ever, God forbid, sell VaynerX, because that's clearly, as you can tell, not the plan. The next day, I'm going to be speaking to all of you with the Inquirer, and I'm going to tell you, it's going to be great, and I'm here for the next 3 years, and we're going to kill it, and Sally is the first person I've ever met that's just like me, and we got this. Literally, none of you should believe this, and I'm telling you all this right now. The next day, you should all quit. I'm very real with people on it.
It's so empowering for me to see, and it's really invigorating, because I want to be that transparent with my team. And so I don't want to have myself a false narrative. And I see you do it, and it's positive and it's successful. And then you have somebody who's literally creeping on the call being like, truth, facts, giving you an amen. That's exactly the culture. This has been so helpful. Are there any other rooms that you would recommend that I be in, or people I should be talking to?
You're gonna be in Miami for the Vibe thing coming up? Do you know about this?
No, I'll be in LA for VCon and then in New Mexico for the in-person event. But if you're adding something in Miami, just say less.
I think we are. I think we're doing a ribbon cutting in September or October of the Miami office for VaynerX that I think Vibe's going to be a part of it. That's at least what I heard this morning. So if it's not on your radar yet, then maybe they're adding it as an extra value, which is amazing. But that setting is going to allow me to have more time to yap than VCon. And I was going to say, I'll give some time between now and then and give you more along the way.
That's above and beyond. It's not even expected. I went to VCon, the very first one. And so I'm happy that it's in my neck of the woods. I can't wait to be rooting for you at a distance, and anytime I can be in your orbit. Thank you. Thank you. This has been amazing. You guys have a great day.
Oh my God.
That felt good.
Gary.
The pattern I spotted was a consistent pattern of you care so much and you know when not to care. Case in point, he cared so much about building this holding company, about being the best marketing holding company. He cared so much about the big idea and then just cared about the small things. He cared so much about knowing what works, and he cared about what they did. He cared less about what they sold. He cared so much about hiring a team with experience that he soon became caring less about firing people who weren't in alignment with that. One of the things that I really loved, because now he has pick of the litter, cream of the crop that wants to work with and for Gary. I'm nowhere near that. Like, I put out job listings and I'm like, oh, I hope. And now I don't want to be that anymore. I want to be active. And then this is what he said. He cared about working with the best, but then he cared so little if they just didn't get it. Lastly, he cared so much about the next business that is going to be better than this business that he doesn't actually care that people know his exact intentions. That level of freedom, that level of self-awareness, that level of confidence is something that is so valuable, and like to hear it directly from him, it feels like I started this call being like, I'm just not sure I'm gonna want to build it. And what I'm walking away with is, be me, do you. Like, he's proof that what it is that you want to do and be 100% yourself and build it the way that you want to. My word of the year was independence, but not independence doing it on my own. It was independence doing it my own way. And from the very first time I ever heard Gary in his orbit, it was through a book called Jab, 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 Right Hook. And I read the book and I saw, oh my God, this person is so much more successful and has so much, but we think the same. Like, he's doing what I'm doing. He's doing it much bigger, but we're doing it. And so I see him doing this. We're doing the same, but much bigger. And I think to myself, it works. It's proof it works. As I continue to build out into the next steps, I get to not do it on my own. I get to do it my own way. And then, lucky for me, my own way looks very close to what Gary's looks like. And so I just feel very thankful. I feel very thankful, feel very good. And let the record state, he called me Jazz. I think we're like BFFs now.